6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Right Fit Podcast. I'm your host, Daryl Jacobs. Join me every Friday, 12 noon Eastern Time, with guests who are decision makers in both collegiate athletics and professional sports. But joining me today is the Director of Athletics at Texas A&M University Commerce, Mr. Tim McMurray. Tim, welcome to the show.
Daryl, thanks for having me.
Well, welcome to the Right Fit. A lot of people are clamoring to get on this show. I like to say that as well. Hopefully one day they will. But thank you, Tim, for taking the time.
I'm glad I was the right fit for today.
Thank you so much. I know you guys having the tough weather out there as well. It seems like it's all across the country. Particularly I'm in the New York, New Jersey area, so I know the weather out there in Texas. I know you guys experience some things you probably usually don't experience.
That's right. I would say where you are is a little more equipped for going through this winter blast, but thankfully we're a little more prepared than we were last year when we had that record storm. So
yes,
things are hopefully calming down as we speak.
Well, thank you. I know you've been quite busy. I know you got a lot of things going on there. But before we get into the Q&A, Tim, talk a little bit about your journey into collegiate athletics and why.
So started my career, actually was very fortunate, worked as an undergraduate, worked as a student assistant in sports information, media relations at Lamar University, Division I school that recently transitioned from the Southland to the WAC, and got to cut my teeth. And when you work, as you know, with your background in Division II and in some mid-major Division I, you get a lot of experience even as a student, because our staff was one full-time sports information director and assistant SID. So I was the baseball SID as an undergraduate. So I really got a chance to learn, because I think of all the administrative functions in athletics, I think the athletic trainer and the sports information contact, they're the ones that, that when a team's competing, they have essentially the same schedule as a coach and a student athlete. So you don't get in some other functions. Every function obviously is important, but I gained a great perspective because I was on a lot of buses and airplanes and planes, trains, and automobiles with coaches of all different sports. Got to learn a lot about that, and also got to see some of the administrative functions that you don't naturally see, because when the AD would travel, I would always try to spend some time with him and learn a little bit more about what he did. And he's one of my mentors, to this day. And so I very fortunate to cut my teeth. And then about after undergraduate, was planning to go to Northwestern State in Natchez for grad school. They were starting a sport management program for the first time, and this was in the spring of '93. And that summer, the sports information director and the assistant sports information director, one got a job at Marquette, one got a job at Baylor, and I was thrust into the assistant SID role right away. Worked in that area for 4 years, and then moved into external relations as assistant AD. So at the age of 26, had a chance to move into external relations at Lamar. So I kind of did that. You see a lot of people in our profession, coaches and administrators, go back home to their alma mater. I did a little bit in reverse. I worked my first 8 years out of school at my alma mater, and after 4 years there, moved on to Texas State. It was Southwest Texas State at the time. They were making a move to a higher level of division, or attempting to make a move to a higher level of Division I, and needed to generate a lot of revenue, and got great experience there for 6 years. Was recruited to Northern Illinois University in 2006. The kid from Texas, I didn't have any idea what a snowblower was. But as you may know, Jim Phillips, the current commissioner of the ACC, former vice president, athletic director at Northwestern at the time, he was the AD at Northern Illinois and had been at Notre Dame and Tennessee prior to that. And Jim recruited me through, we were talking about before we came on the air, through some NACTA connections. We got introduced, and Jim's very persuasive and spent 4.5 great years at NIU. Jim was there for almost 3 of them, and we just had some great times together. He's one of my great friends and mentors to this day, and we stay in touch frequently, and really learned a lot. I would say a lot of what we do, the way we structure, organizationally, and sport administration responsibilities, and some of our development structure, that came from a lot of the things I learned under Jim, and I really learned from him the difference in leadership and management. I know we're going to talk a little bit about maybe the hiring process and do's and don'ts of interviewing in this. So that really helped me. Then had a chance to return to Texas in 2010 at SMU in associate AD role and over development there and some of our external relations functions, and had a great experience there. Worked for 2 really good ADs there. Steve Orsini hired me. Rick Hart, who's also a friend and mentor to this day, gave me some expanded responsibilities when Rick got there in 2012, and that helped me get the senior associate AD job at University of Maryland with Kevin Anderson, who I know is a friend of this initiative as well. And Kevin had tremendous responsibility, gave me tremendous responsibilities. Was at Maryland for about 1.5 years. Have a blended family situation, and at the time for my family, it was best that we look to return back to this part of the country. And the A&M Commerce job came open that summer, and got engaged with it, and didn't know a lot about Division II. I'd had some really, really good friends at the Division II level, in this region, and learned a lot about it quickly and saw a tremendous opportunity. And we've been here almost 6.5 years now, and really, really enjoy our time in commerce.
Well, you didn't like the East Coast. I see you left.
We enjoyed the East Coast. It was purely a personal decision. So,
well, no, I'm just joking. And Kevin Anderson, who I know very well, he's been on a couple of my podcasts in the past, and
really good man.
leader. Yeah. He's
good friend, good friend to this day.
Yep. Right, he's at Air Force now, so I'm glad to see him being able to get back in as well.
Yep.
Let's talk about Texas A&M University Commerce athletics. Tell us, what does that look like, and then we'll talk a little bit about you guys transitioning from Division II to Division I in the fall of 2022. But talk about what does Texas A&M University Commerce athletics looks like currently, and then you can go right into the next question, Tim, and talk about the transition, how it's going to look, after the transition in terms of, and then we'll talk about some other things as well.
Yeah. So our department, I would say our strength is really rooted in, I think the world of our whole department, but I think the world of our head coaches. I think we have 9 tremendous leaders, and we have there's 5 things as an AD that every day I say I focus on, and that's the student athlete experience, our people, political acumen with campus and external constituents, resources and facilities, and that's kind of the matrix of, I meet with every new employee for 15 minutes their first week, and I have that spelled out on a laminated, looks like a football coach's play card.
I was getting ready to say you must have took it out of the coach's playbook.
I did, and I give each one of them a copy of that. And on the other side of it, of the play card, is our mission, our core values, and our 8 guiding principles. So our mission is to provide a best-in-class experience for all, and that can be students, faculty, staff, alumni, donor, season ticket holders, anybody that touches or comes through our program. So we're very, very mission committed. We talk about it during our interview process, what it means, the way we evaluate student athlete experience. It has a 3-pronged question, and it's best in class if it helps us graduate, produce productive citizens, and win, right? Because we do, and it's in that order. Student comes first, and we really, it aligns well with our institutional philosophy, because our president is very, very student centered. And if we're not serving our number one constituent, those students, whether they're an athlete or not, then we're probably not in the right profession. And that comes from the top. we trickle it down to our department, so if it's a financial aid issue, with a scholarship check, if it's a residential issue, if it's a, you hate to say it, if it's a student conduct issue, we're going to be proactive and we're going to be responsive, and we're not going to, try to cover anything up or sweep anything under the rug. If we address things head on, they typically aligns with our best in class mission. And then our 5 core values: passion, respect, innovation, determination, and excellence. Yeah, it's an acronym for PRIDE, but each of those 5 things, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in the conversation later. But in terms of how we evolved to getting that invite to Division I and the transition, it really is. It's a combination of what we do. We've had 10 now 12 straight semesters, going on 13, with a student athlete cumulative GPA over a 3.0. It was 3.26 this past semester. We had 51 4.0s. We graduated a high number of kids just this past December. Had 19 graduates, and had 73 throughout the last academic year, calendar year. And so we do the student part right. And we don't have just an academic center. We have a student athlete success center. It's named the Thrower Student Athlete Success Center. One of our very generous alums, Jim Thrower, who's a 3-sport athlete at A&M Commerce. He played in the NFL for the Philadelphia Eagles and Detroit Lions. And Jim really believes in that student athlete success piece. And he and I, are very close to this day. He's been a great advisor to me on my champion circle. And there's a quote of Jim's that we have hanging on a mural in our success center that, strive, make the goal perfection, because if you don't succeed, it'll still be mere excellence. If you fail, it'll still be mere excellence. And that really typifies what we try to produce in that student athlete success center. Yes, it's where you get your papers, and you get your papers printed, you get advised, you do your study hours, you get your tutoring set up. But it's also where we have our Lion Leadership Academy, and that's got our resume writing workshops, financial literacy. We have campus partners that come in and do presentations, leadership, management style, ethics, how to network, how to interview, how to do your elevator pitch. So if you're going to interview with Daryl Jacobs, for a position, you might be on the elevator with him for 30 seconds riding up to his office, right? You got to be able to sell yourself in 30 seconds, make eye contact, wear your name tag on the right side, just business etiquette type things. And then we also have a very active Student Athlete Advisory Council and Responsible Lions, student organization that's focused on student athlete health and mental health and well-being. So it's a true student athlete success story. And then obviously the third piece, so there's the student and the athlete, and we talk about that on recruiting visits. And the athletic part, been very fortunate to have tremendous success. We in 2017-18, our most successful competitive year in school history. We didn't just have a national football championship. We had 9 teams go into NCAA postseason, another regional finalist for softball program that year. And we also had in 4 different sports the National Player of the Year. So it was very, very special. And so it, we haven't unfortunately had another national championship, but football postseason success, women's basketball postseason success, softball, volleyball, really across the board. All but a couple of programs have had multi-year NCAA postseason streaks recently. So that was very attractive as the Southland looked to expand this spring. And dialogue was initiated what that might look like late in the spring, and it became, ramped up. Conceptual conversations ramped up as the summer progressed. And so as soon as our students got back in August, the first thing Dr. Rudin and I did was we met with our Student Athlete Advisory Council leadership and our student government leadership, and they unanimously supported a resolution for us to pursue it, because if the students weren't going to be engaged and excited about it, then there's really not a reason to do it. And then it snowballed from there into going to faculty senate, going to staff council, talking to some of our key donors, talking to the deans, and things wrapped up. Things accelerated very quickly, I would say, from August 30th to our announcement on September 28th.
Well, it sounds like you're quite busy, and some of the things that you mentioned, of course, without student athletes, you wouldn't have no job. And so,
That's right.
You understand that as well. And a lot of people, a lot of administrators and ads I bring on the show always mention that as well. You guys, that 2017-18 year was tremendous. That's monumental for any program at any level. To have that as well. During the transition, let's talk about some of the opportunities that your department will have to fill now that you're leaving Division II, going to Division I, because there's some positions now that's mandatory that you're going to have to bring new people on board to fill. And now you're going to have to deal with a lot of different things you normally didn't have to deal with during that transition. Can you talk about some of those opportunities and talk about,
Sure.
the possible fit for those opportunities?
I can, and we've started to fill some of those already administratively, and actually backfill. We're actually in some areas administrative. We're competitively staffed. We're a little light in a couple of areas as well. We'll work on those throughout the transition. But one key position, and I think it's a credit to our culture and our professional development and the quality of people we have administratively supporting these coaches. My former deputy athletic director, who'd been here 12 years, Judy Sackfield, the literally 2 weeks before the pandemic, was recruited over to campus by President Rudin to be our new vice president for student success and dean of students. And I hated losing Judy. She institutional knowledge. She really built that Thrower Student Athlete Success Center from the ground up. It was her vision, her advising model, her student support model. We have the university's modeling a lot of our student success paradigms and initiatives. And Judy, that was a whole lot of institutional knowledge. And even though thankfully, she's still a great colleague and friend, we serve on the president's executive team together. But that's a whole lot of knowledge, talent, and work ethic. And she is a ferocious advocate for students. And when that walked across the street to the administration building, that was a big void, and we spread some responsibilities out among two or three people, but it still wasn't, the same as having that true right hand that had that level of experience and depth in administrative affairs and managing. And we have a very, very talented administrative staff. The challenge for me was at the time they had never overseen people. And you can certainly relate to that. Sometimes there are coaches that make great assistant coaches, but then all of a sudden, let's take a basketball staff. You're managing, all of a sudden you become head coach. You're managing 3 assistant coaches, an ops person, maybe an analyst or GAs, depending on how big your department is, or even at the Division II level, managing 1 or 2 assistants and a GA. It's great to be the head coach, right? Just like it's great to be the AD or deputy AD, but you have to learn to not just manage and lead yourself, because now all of a sudden you're doing the same with other people.
Well, we call it program management. One of the things
Correct.
I talk to young coaches about program management
Yep.
in regards to the success of your program is not going to be, as I tell them, not measured in X and O's, but it's going to be measured, and your success is going to come from how you manage your program.
Yeah, and who you put your name behind. Yep. And that was a big transition, because in the middle of that, and in a quote unquote normal transition like that, when you lose a good person, I would have had a lot more in-person time to meet face-to-face, one-on-one, without a mask and without social distancing. And COVID created logistical nightmare. Just go down the list, right? I mean, in 20 logistical nightmares, scheduling nightmares, eligibility, scholarships, or is this person coming back? Are we going to be able to honor this scholarship? All of that. Our campus was tremendous. No student athlete that wanted their 6th year of eligibility was denied it. So we were very, very fortunate there. But that required, it sounds clean and tidy right now. So we had some definite issues during the pandemic. So now when the staffing issues. So when the Southland announcement came through, one of the recommendations in their site visit report that accompanied the formal invitation was a recommendation to add, specifically add back that deputy position, which we've recently done. I'll talk about that in a minute, and then add senior level administrators with Division I experience. And we've had, as you might expect, we've had some natural turnover this fall, even with the transition, and so that's allowed us. We already had one or two positions open that from the transitions this summer that happened naturally in administration, and so we've been able. I'm very pleased. We've got Eric Coleman is our new deputy athletics director. He joined us in early December, already making an impact. He's our chief operating officer. He oversees essentially. He works directly with our associate over our Thrower Student Athlete Success Center, but he oversees all of our performance areas that affect the student athlete when they're not with their coach, right? So he'll work with sports medicine, strength and conditioning, campus partners and residential life, student conduct, those type of things. And he's really been a home run hire. Eric was at Florida Atlantic, was at Fresno State prior to that. Iowa, played football, Division II football student athlete. And so really is the total package because he's come in already. And one of the things, as you know, Daryl, Division I requires APR, and we've got to manage that. And Eric is a thought leader in that area. So he's already putting that structure together. Just hired a new associate AD for compliance, Dale Brown. Dale comes from Weber State. And has a tremendous background, law degree. Dale's been here about 3 weeks now and is really making a great impact. And then I'm really excited.
And Tim, that seems to be a trend.
What's that?
Compliance officers now, people are looking
for
compliance officers with law degrees. I was telling somebody that the other day. I had a friend who has a daughter who really went to law school and don't want to do a lawyer now. I said, in collegiate athletics, you can go into compliance and they're looking for people with law degrees.
Well, and so to finish that point, my new senior associate AD for business services and senior woman administrator who starts next week is Sydney Jones. Sydney's coming to us from Air Force. She's actually a recommendation from our mutual friend, Kevin Anderson. And Sydney also has a law degree. She started out in professional sports. Then she worked at Lincoln Memorial as SWA and was over external affairs there. Moved into the procurement and contracting side at Air Force, and she's going to be a tremendous addition. So I've got, we're going to have the best debate team among Southland schools. I've got two lawyers leading the room. But to your point, really quick on that, it is amazing. Since I got in the profession, the compliance was a brand new position. It evolved, as I was in undergrad and first started my career, and this is the early 90s. Our first compliance officer at Lamar was our head athletic trainer because at the time, the compliance person was the one that did the paperwork, right? And the NCAA manual definitely wasn't, several hundred pages like it is now. It was it went from this to that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, boy, do I know.
20-year period. So we, and as a former coach, that certainly has evolved. So, a law degree certainly helps because not just the law and understanding rules and that type of stuff, because there's a number of excellent compliance professionals out there that don't have formal law degree or background, but that critical thinking piece and how to work backwards from yes, not start at no. Right. And that's what I really look for in hiring a compliance person. And so, so my point, so we've made, four are in the process of making 3 key and have a fourth coming on to see us to join us here pretty quickly, and very, very excited about, what we're doing. And we've got 3, really talented administrators that they're joining. Sherrod Williams is our associate AD for operations and competitive excellence. He's also our DEI designate in our department.
Here you go, buddy. I like that.
And and Sherrod's tremendous. Sherrod was over in external affairs, and saw something there with talent, with his organizational skills, his drive, his initiative. And when I had that internal operations position turnover last spring, I went to him and presented that, and we had a great conversation. And he's right next door to me now, and he's a key thought leader in our department, and really is our liaison with several campus offices that impact that DEI initiative. Because we actually were very fortunate to win an NCAA Award of Excellence last year for our Make It Important initiative. So came in third in the country there, and we're really proud of that. So, and then Josh Mank in our communications area. Josh has been with me 6 years, ran a tremendous Division II communications area, and I'm confident we will continue to strategically engage our constituents under Josh's leadership there. And then Victoria Kislick, who's a protege of my former deputy Judy Sackfield. She's our associate AD for student athlete success, runs the Thrower Center day to day. And we're really, really pleased with that group we put together that supports our coaches and continue to develop them as leaders and the staffs that they manage.
We'll take a commercial break, Tim. We'll get back. We'll continue to talk about the hiring process and then talk a little bit about some coaching.
Okay, that'd be great.
In terms of what you may be looking for in a coach and how you would like for your coaches to be when operating your program. You're listening and watching The Right Fit with Daryl Jacobs.
The Right Fit podcast is brought to you by Rising Coaches Search and Consulting. Tired of spending what seems like all of your time and budget filling coaching vacancies? Let Rising Coaches Search and Consulting handle your next coaching search. Our process is simple. We identify, vet, and recruit a talented and diverse group of professionals that fits your institution's profile. All for a low price that we guarantee will beat our competitions. Plus, all of your searches will be handled by former coaches, meaning we will get the best possible insight on all of your candidates, and you'll get the perspective that only a former coach could provide. For testimonials, a full client list, or more information, please visit risingcoaches.com.
Welcome back to The Right Fit. I'm your host, Daryl Jacobs. I'm with my guest today, Tim McMurray, Director of Athletics at Texas A&M University Commerce, and we're talking about being the right fit. Tim, let's talk a little bit about some of the do's and don'ts. I just want to get into that when you get to the interview process. And let's talk about it from a coach's standpoint.
Sure.
When you was hiring a particular coach, regardless of the sport. I just want to talk about the do's and don'ts. And you can do it in threes. I always say, give me 3 do's and 3
Okay.
don'ts.
Yeah,
And particularly, with the coaches watching, because this is so important sometimes,
Sure.
that coaches, sometimes fall short in terms of preparation when it comes to the interview process.
On the dues, just my personal opinion, coaches don't grow up always having to, in this profession, they don't always grow up having to do a resume. And I'm not, the resume doesn't, it's not always, at a lot of schools now, that there has to be something on paper. You've got to go, there's HR processes just from the legal perspective. And you don't have to spend a ton of time on your resume because there's biographies that attach it, but you need to be able to sell to a hiring, whether it's an AD, senior associate AD, committee,
Or search firm.
search firm. Yeah, and so you got to be able to show that you can communicate, lay out. You said it earlier, your program vision, program management, and it's not that you have to have a resume because he didn't put all or she didn't put all of her experience in. It's not about that. It's how do you that's your first impression. So get some background going, because especially if you're depending on the quality of website, whatever, don't assume the school knows everything about you, right? And that's a chance for you to sell a little bit more. So do have a professional resume, vita background, that can help convey that you have a program vision. And that can be whether you're interviewing for the head job, for your first full-time assistant. If you're a GA watching this, that I think that's a great practice. Also, I think it's really important. I've been surprised a little bit, even with some of these administrative hires, and we've had actually, a couple over the last year, we've had a couple coaching searches as well. 3 actually, golf and soccer, 2 golfs and a soccer. And with some of the candidates, none of the 3 that we hired, thankfully, but with some of the candidates, I was really surprised they didn't do their homework on who they'd be meeting with when they came to campus. If we give them their itinerary, you need to, because what do you have to do? What do you need, to be a successful coach? It really helps if you have great students and great players, right? And hopefully they go hand in hand. But so to identify talent, you got to prepare. You don't just go to the gym and say, I'm going to watch this game or I'll watch a series of games at this tournament. And I'm going to just pick the, best 6 or 7 I see there. You do some of that, but most of the time, exactly who you're going to see, right, as a coach. And maybe you see somebody on a side court or somebody else. That's why you get out and about. But treat the interview the same. Treat the interview like you're going to a big, travel tournament, or like you're going, to a state tournament, because you need to know something about those people, because that shows that you know how to connect. And part of what, you're being evaluated on is your ability to connect. And then on the third piece, I think the appearance is just so important. Again, that's not necessarily will stop you from getting a job, but we want you to represent in our department. We want you to represent us in a best in class manner. And I think, making sure you don't just show up dressed like you have the job, for sure. So, and then on the 3 don'ts, don't ever start with money. If it's a search firm running the search, they'll probably be able to deliver that message. And here's the range, because, right, like if we're doing a search together, we don't want to waste our time. And most of the time, if I'm calling a candidate to recruit that I've taken initiative, or they were either already on my short list or they were referred to me by somebody that I trust in my circle, I'm going to address it head on, because I don't want to waste either one of our time. So I give them a range. It's rarely an exact number, because there's ways to put together packages. But anyway, so don't start with money. Number 2, I would say, don't, sort of paralleling with the homework piece, don't assume we know everything about you, and don't assume in that vein where you stand in the process, because my current head coach in men's basketball was the only non-sitting head coach that I brought in, and he quickly separated himself. And I interviewed head coaches at the time that had been either coach of the year or won their conference for D2 sitting head coaches. And this assistant that had been an assistant here, played at a high level, Jared Von Rosenberg at Hartford for John Gallagher, coached there, came highly recommended, and came in and really blew the doors off in his interview. And he'd been an assistant here under our coach that was
he was hungry. He was hungry.
He was hungry.
He was
and
hungry.
He came to the show. So don't ever assume, because obviously, I mean, we know how it is. Coaches kind of know who may be involved in jobs and who may be getting jobs and who else is interviewing. And don't assume that you can't, don't assume that you're already eliminated, or don't assume that you're just, checking a box, whether it's from a gender, ethnic, race, or experience perspective. So I would say never make assumptions when you go into a search process like that.
Well, one of the things you mentioned when we initially started talking today in regards to the elevator pitch, I've seen, I sat on committees and been part of that, and even though the candidate might have been a qualified looking candidate on paper, but the elevator pitch, the first 4 or 5 minutes really can do somebody in, either can turn off the committee or, whatever the case may be. As you mentioned, don't assume nobody know everything about you, but that's softball. We call it the softball question that you get, and people really miss that question a lot,
That's
as well. They really do. They really do. They take it for granted and not knowing. And you mentioned something very interesting. knowing who's interviewing you, knowing who's on the committee. If you get the name of the people on the committee, you mentioned this, do the research. You got to find some commonality
Right.
when you're talking with them, or you may know somebody that might have worked with them at a particular school. You might know, so you try to find that commonality. And
Right. I mean, you and I, we get connected through Brian Burton. Good,
absolutely,
good friend. His brother is our women's basketball
he's a women's coach.
I know Jason's been involved with this initiative. Jason's a tremendous. Jason's not a very good coach. Jason's a very elite coach.
Right.
And he's not only an elite coach, he's an elite leader of young women. And I was going to say that so thankfully I haven't had to hire a women's coach here because I've been very, very.
But let's talk about
football really quick. Let me say to go back to your point on that elevator pitch, football and men's basketball searches I've done, and we did them at one at a hotel in Dallas, one at a hotel in Rockwall, and it's not because the Dallas Morning News or any other outlets covering the A&M Commerce coaching search, but you just don't want coaches, bumping into each other on campus, and at that level, you want to be a little more confidential to protect everyone in that. But part of that on the literal elevator pitch, I'm going to have a senior administrator. At the time, it would have been, Judy Sackfield, my deputy AD. She's going to walk them up, to the hotel room, and that I want to know what that elevator ride was like. I want to know what was your first impression of that coach. So I would say maybe another don't take first impressions for granted in the process.
Well, that is correct. I remember I got a job on the way up in an elevator. Didn't know I was talking to the person I was interviewing with.
Yeah.
And just had conversation, just start talking. And they say, why are you here? And I start telling them why I was here. I gave him an elevator pitch.
Without knowing
without knowing who he was.
That's
get to the interview and walk in the room. It's him in a committee. He's the head of the committee. He just started smiling at me. And he told me, he said, man, you had me in the elevator. He said that was phenomenal in that short period of time, which was about 20 seconds.
That's an awesome example.
Yep, absolutely. Let's talk about some of the important characteristics in regards to maybe this administrative position or coaching position, but let's talk about some of the different characteristics you think someone should possess, particularly in a coach in this profession that you may look for. And then we'll get to the final question of the day, which I'm going to love this one, as well. Let's talk about some of those characteristics you may be looking for in a coach, Tim.
All right. Very right off the bat, passion for the student-athlete experience and their success, an unwavering commitment to compliance, a relentless and strategic recruiting philosophy. To your point earlier, I want to see an organized and efficient program structure. And then I want to see demonstrated examples of that political acumen with campus partners, with alumni and donors, with community leaders. And so all of those things, if you put it in the package and the bundle, I think you see those characteristics in each of our 9 head coaches. And I've been very fortunate to be engaged in hiring and or retaining, like I said, Jason Burton in women's basketball and Craig Case in volleyball are the 2 that I haven't been a part of having the good fortune to hire here currently. So it's been those things again, student, passion for the student athlete experience, unwavering commitment to compliance, strategic and relentless recruiting strategy, programs, efficient and organized program structure, and then high level of political acumen with relationships. So that's what I look for on the coaching side for sure. And it generally, we form our questions in each of those 5 areas from those guardrails.
And that's pretty much the guideline. I like the way you put it, the political acumen. And when I mentioned to someone the other day, I said, listen, if you're going to go into a job interview, you got to deal with the internal and external constituents. And the coach said, well, who are you talking about? I said, okay. I said, I just gave you a word that you need to know. That means you're going to know who's on campus and who's in the community. That could be alumni. That can be a number of people, donors, and all that kind of stuff as well. And I told him also, you may have to become a fundraiser at some point in time as well, depending on the sport you're in, to that degree as well.
And I'll give you a quick, before we do that last question, I'll give you a quick example from earlier this week in our department. If we don't have a desire to sustain great relationships with campus partners, it could have really backfired, because our associate VP for finance and our controller, she actually has about an hour and 15-minute commute to work every day, or a little over an hour. And she stayed till about 6:30, 6:45 the other night, because we had to help cut do an emergency rush on some scholarship checks that had gotten kind of gummed up in our system for kids, or they were going to get evicted from their apartments. Well, if we don't have some credible relationships over there, and we just go over there stomping our foot, we're probably not going to get very effective. But, thankfully the attitude in our vice president for finance and administration's division, and throughout our president's executive team, like we said, the student is always first. And that's an example of what that can be.
Well, you couldn't have picked a better example. I've told people all my championships I've won has been because my campus relationships with the people on campus. That's so important to anything that you do. Tim, thank you for taking the time.
You bet.
Join me this afternoon. And I'm going to get to this last question. I love to do this because it gives the viewers and listeners an opportunity to learn something about you. It's called word association. You say the first thing come to mind based on what I say to you. It's keep it clean.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Not a problem.
All right. Lamar University.
Legacy.
Division I.
Opportunity.
Family.
Everything.
Finally, TAMUC.
That's 3-word. Best in class. I cheated.
Well, that's Texas A&M University Commerce. That's what that stands for as well. But again, thank you so much, Tim, for taking the time this afternoon. I want to thank the viewers for tuning in and watching as well. Join me next week when I have some more tremendous guests on from the world of collegiate athletics and professional sports. Until then, please stay healthy, stay safe, and have a great weekend.